please don't adjust your television sets. You are not seeing double, for we have two brothers in the house. Joel, you seem offended by my comment there, mate. I don't know if you two, mate. You've got your head covered up with you're representing Relay today, it seems. But you've got an amazing mullet, and I think the two of you have got some sort of rivalry going down with your hairstyles, right? Not that I'm envious. I don't know why I would be. But how's your day been, Janis?
I'm good. How are you?
Mate, I'm living the dream, right? Going to Fiat Mine every day, earning not enough money to buy Bitcoin. What else can you ask for? Mate, and I'm also playing mediator today, so I don't want any fallout between the two of you, all right? So behave yourselves. But mate, you went to Prague. We missed out, Joel and I. I had some serious FOMO sat over here in London watching the little sneak bits that they were putting out. Tell me, give me the details, mate. What happened? Was it a good conference?
Well, it was my first conference in Prague, and it was amazing. Lots of people, like about 9,000 people. So that was,
oh wow,
especially people which smelled weird sometimes. So let's not get into that. But I had the privilege to interview people. So I interviewed 21 people, I think. Mm-hmm. Actually, 22. I also recorded a podcast episode for my own podcast, but that was amazing. Interviewing 21 people. I interviewed Sailor, Jack Mallers, Adam Back, Obi from Fedi, Isabella Santos, she who explains Bitcoin in like her short videos on Twitter. I didn't interview. No, yes, I interviewed one of the brothers who organizes BTC Prague. It was Matthias.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep, we had him on too.
So I interviewed a lot of people, basically, just like short 5 minutes. I actually also interviewed Julian Rieniger from Relay, the CEO of Relay, which was my longest interview, like 17 minutes. So that was a lot. But yeah, I just interviewed people and I enjoyed the conference.
So, mate, that's a massive amount of numbers that went in it.
Yeah.
Is that more than last year? I'm just trying to remember. But it seems like a huge amount of people went there.
Last year was about 5,000 people. So this year it's like 9,000. So that's like 4,000 more. So it was a lot. It was also really loud and it was quite exhausting, but it was nice.
Yeah, and for all of the listeners who are confused about the name, yes, Janis is my name, and I'll keep the brotherly banter to an absolute minimum. Otherwise, I get scrutinized from family internal affairs, let's call it this way. Like the internal investigation team will open up an investigation into me. But Janis, before we get started with the convo, how did you find Bitcoin? What is your rabbit hole story? And what do you find so interesting about it?
Okay, I'm going to do my Michael Saver brief here. No. Well, basically, Joel, when you discovered Bitcoin in 2016, 15-ish, somewhere around there,
13, but okay.
okay, yeah, sorry, mate. I was immediately.
It's okay. You were still shitting your pants, so everything's good.
Yeah. I was 11. Okay.
Now, boys. Look, I'm mediator again. All right.
No, I was. I immediately got onto the Bitcoin train, but hardcore. When I really hardcore understood it and what it meant was 2019, 20ish, basically when the whole pandemic started, But 2016, 15ish, Short actually talked about it like almost every day. I was like, hey, what's the deal with that? And my mom was a ex-banker, so you kind of imagine how that went. So that was...
You can say I failed in orange pilling. That's okay.
In orange pilling. So yeah, but because I heard about it and knew what it is, I never tweeted about it. I never talked to my peers in school because they were like, I'm open about saying my political statements and how I view the world, and I was already like the black sheep because of that. So I didn't share my story about Bitcoin and what it is basically. And yeah, and then 2018, I got more into it because my mom then also eventually got orange pilled by Joel and by a friend of ours, which was named Patrick German, I think. He has a YouTube channel where he explains crypto and all those shitcoins, but let's not get into that. And yeah, essentially because of that, I got orange pilled. And what was the second question, Joel? I don't remember.
Attention spam of a goldfish. Why did you stay around?
Why did you stick around, and what are you doing now, basically?
So why did I stick around? Because I realized how fucked up the world is. I mean, I'm from Switzerland, so we always had that talk: is Switzerland truly neutral? And I'm like, no, it's not, because we helped the Nazis in World War II, and I love history, so I know all the facts about history, basically. And I saw that our political spectrum basically is corrupt, and it's everywhere corrupt. You know, in the US, in the UK, in Austria, in Switzerland, in Russia, in China, and that was the moment where I said enough is enough, and let's stick with Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is the first digital coin which is not hackable. You can't corrupt it, and it gives us freedom, right? So that was basically why why we sticked as a family also with Bitcoin, and yeah, that's basically my story. So.
Well, I think, Joel, you need to take an award for most orange-pilled, because it's difficult orange-pilling people, right? It seems like you've been working hard at it. So, as you can see, we're true Bitcoiners here at Rabbit Hole Stories. And, mate, you've got a podcast, right?
Yeah.
You're a rival of ours.
I wouldn't say rival, but it's called Nomad Podcast, and we chose Nomad because we're nomads. We travel around the world, and currently we're in Vienna, so I don't have it too far from Joel, but let's not talk about that. He's already annoyed enough.
It's probably better that you're slightly separated at this point. But mate, sorry, you were saying you were interviewing like 21 people, including Sailor and some of the sort of big Bitcoin shooters, if you like, within the space. Yeah. And obviously, we interview people a lot here, including yourself now. So welcome, you're part of the family, and that, you know, obviously you already are. But sometimes, like, how do you find interviewing people? Is it kind of nerve-wracking? Do you sort of prepare beforehand, or do you just sort of like take them as they are?
I wrote down my questions, which I'm gonna ask people. That's the first thing. I always prepare. I always write down my stuff, which I'm gonna ask or talk about. And it was funny. I was not nervous, but it was weird when you go and ask people, "Hey, can I interview you?" And they're like, "What's it about?" I'm like, "Just short interview, like 5 minutes, 3 questions." And like, unless you don't want to, it's fine. They're like, "Yeah, okay, let's go." So that was weird, I would say, because I wasn't aware if they actually want to or if they don't want to, you know. So but all of them said yes. So eventually it ended up good. And the most nervous I was with Sager, because Sager came out of his cabin, like he had a cabin upstairs in the web section, where he came out, and I was like immediately approaching him, "Hey, can I interview you? You want to do an interview?" And I was like, okay, if he says no, I'm happy. If he says yes, I'm even more happy. So and he was like, "Yeah, what's about?" I'm like, "Bitcoin only, of course." And he was like, "Well," and I was like, "Unless you're afraid to and you don't want to, then we don't do it. And a no is a no, right?" And he was like looking at me and like, "Okay, let's do it." We went upstairs, and that was the most nerve-wracking I have ever been, right? That was the most nerve-wracking experience, and that was the only moment I was really nervous. And you can probably tell because I'm talking a lot. So that's when I'm nervous. I talk a lot, but yeah, I wasn't nervous at all, but there I was really, really nervous. So that was, yeah.
Mate, yeah, I can imagine. Obviously, because I don't know. Sometimes I'm like, you know, I fancy interviewing Sailor, and I think I'd like to think that I would ask the questions that maybe no one else has asked him before, like challenge him on a few points and stuff like that. And I don't know. I wonder if that would go down well within the Bitcoin ecosystem. You know, because sometimes we often ask the same questions again and again and again, right?
Yeah.
Across different podcasts. So.
One of the questions I asked him actually was, "You always say Bitcoin is for everyone," and immediately when I said that sentence, he was looking at me like, "Oh, okay, here we go." And I was like, "Can we not say that it's for those who understand it and basically accept it?" And he was like, "Well, everybody needs Bitcoin," and he was also explaining how they don't know it yet that they need it actually in future times. So that was one of the questions. And I always say, if we say Bitcoin is for everyone, is it truly really for everyone? I mean, if we have like a granny which is like 90 years old, you want to explain Bitcoin to her, really? I mean, I'm just making great examples now, but I mean, you can orange pill her, but it's going to be hard, especially when we talk about technological aspects, when you talk about fiat,
Mm.
when you talk about, how our financial world basically works. They don't get that. I mean, also people who don't want to get it, right? You can't orange pill those people. So that was basically, yeah.
We're talking about age and stuff. Like, what I did think when I saw you on one of the socials and you were interviewing Sailor, it's like, it's wicked that we've got somebody of your generation interviewing Michael Saylor, because then you're sort of putting the signal out there to your peers, right, and people of your generation. What sort of thoughts have you had about your generation in Bitcoin and how we can sort of get more people on board who should know the technological aspects of Bitcoin? They should be the people that understand it easier than the likes of me, for example, and I'll get in my, halfway through my lifespan. How can your generation stand up and put the signal out?
And maybe also tell the viewers how old you are, Janis, so they have
I'm
a
19.
grasp perspective.
I'm 19, so first thing, don't glue yourselves on the street. That would be a crucial part. Don't be those idiots which glue themselves on the street. Otherwise, people drive over you, and then you have nothing to live for. So, or you lose in hand. But I would say how to get my generation into Bitcoin. I wouldn't say read. I would say read books, but most of my generation they haven't even read books, which is astonishing. I mean, how can you not read books? I mean, it's as simple as that, right? Reading books. But I would say read books. Show them games, because there are games where you can earn sats, and if you start showing them what sats are, or example, what also Bitcoin is through games, they will immediately get curious, and I'm like, oh look, I have earned sats again, or I played that game and there's something. I'm like, yeah, there you go, right? Now you're orange pilled. Now, after you did that, let's get more into the technical stuff. What is blockchain? What is Bitcoin? Who's Satoshi Nakamoto? Who's that? Who is Adam Back? Who's Michael Saylor? Who's Jack Mallers, right? And I would argue that the best way of explaining, for example, the blockchain technology is using apples, right? I mean, it's as simple as that, or using toilet paper. So, I mean, I always make the example, imagine if you have a chain of apples and each apple looks the same, but actually is different, has a different language, has a different color, stuff like that, right? So, I mean, Joel is looking at me like he's gonna kill me, but
no, I was just thinking. So apples can speak now, but that's okay. Go ahead with your explanation.
I mean, if a man can say he's a woman, apples can speak now. So,
fair enough.
But just stuff
Actually,
like that.
I do identify as a Braeburn apple.
Okay, you kind of look like one.
I thought Ian's gonna say he identifies as like
as
British,
an egg?
No, as British Standard White, but let's not get. But yeah, just simple. Keep it simple. Don't get too technology. Don't get hard. That's what you said, but just don't do stuff like that's hard for people. Fuck. Don't do stuff that's not easy to understand for people. Yeah, I can't help it myself, but just keep it simple. That's my advice, and yeah.
Do you also think, because a lot of the younger generations are glued to their phones, granted, even you and I, Ian, at one point throughout the day, you just stupidly scroll on this device. Do you also think there has to be more gamification being done in wallets, in apps and services for the younger people? Or is that not really the case? Is it more really the thrill of like, I can beat my friends, I can earn more sats than my friends, or something along these lines?
I would say both. Because first, if you would have let's say you have, I'm taking Relay as an example. Relay would have games on their app, on their wallets, right? And people could earn Lightning through that. That would be cool, because in the first, you wouldn't have to transfer your sats to someone else's wallet. You already have it in that wallet, right? And second, it would also boost the Relay as a company, because they would be then known for, hey, you can earn sats through playing games on Relay, right? And then what the other thing you said, that what was it again? I'm so sorry, it's so hot, mate.
How do we basically also need to optimize for mobile so that you spend more times in these apps, or is there also something else you want to see that you can maybe orange pill friends?
I I would say yes, because we need more games, because although we have some games, there are not a lot of games. I mean, there are only 3, 4, 5 games maybe where you can earn sats, and it's not a lot. So I would say yes, we need more games where we can adopt Lightning or Bitcoin and where people can also learn from that. I mean, there's a game I play where you basically hop on the blockchain, like with your skin. Like I have like the honey badger from Riga, and you just jump around and you collect tickets, and the amount of tickets you have, you get sats, right? And I think we need more games like that. So it's a cool thing, right? Because people will understand and get it if they see it. So
I'm also curious as when I speak to, obviously through my job, you sometimes also speak to, influencers you work with who may be younger and who are sort of up and coming. And what I often also get is that they respond to something along the lines of like, oh, this really doesn't interest me in Bitcoin. One example is that we recently spoke about monetary policy. And it's like, this is very interesting if you look at the halving and like the schedules and these things and how it's actually working out for us. And that influencer just went back to me like, this doesn't interest me at my age currently. Is there anything in Bitcoin that doesn't interest you? And if it doesn't, what do you think does it need that it starts picking up your interest?
Can I start with what actually also interests me? Because I think that's
sure.
I'm really interested into arts, and I like when we have artists in the Bitcoin space, like Phil Montoya, which you also had on your podcast. Selling their arts and paintings and generally stuff, they earn Bitcoin, right? I think that's really cool, and that's what I actually also love. So but what not interests me is that philosophical aspect of Bitcoin.
Oh, okay.
It's not my thing. It's not my thing, because I say arts and philosophy is something completely different. Although they're connected and they may look similar, they're not. So that's a thing that annoys me, because you have podcasts out there which are really philosophical, and they always say, oh yeah, Bitcoin is this and that, and in 200 years it will replace the fiat system. Like, no, it won't. We can talk about that for hours, how Bitcoin can replace fiat, but it won't happen from now until tomorrow, right? So yeah, that's the thing I don't like about the Bitcoin space, that they're always like this, and actually also communistic, because we have that in the Bitcoin space, that they're always this socialistic and communistic. And I always say, if you want socialism, fuck off to China or North Korea. Seriously, that's a thing where I'm getting annoyed right there, right? Because we live in a capitalistic society where everyone has a chance to get rich, and some people get rich because they're lucky or because they're clever, and some people won't get rich because they don't understand our system, or I would say they're not financially prepared. So but yeah, that's also a thing that annoys me: socialism and communism in the Bitcoin space. So
some strong feelings there from you, Janis.
Or shall we say Adolf?
Yeah.
No, joking.
Oh dear. What an
gosh.
episode. I'm loving it. Mate, but on the art side of things, right? Yeah, I agree. Because like if you're spending like time painting something and drawing something, a lot of the stuff that I see in the sort of exhibitions and things like that, it's almost like a different way of communicating a message, right? There's like anarchy in it. There's like some sort of visual representation of a message that they're trying to put out there. And it's just like gaming, like you were talking about earlier. It's a way to sort of orange pill people. It's a way to keep them engaged and incentivized to come in and sort of learn more about it. Just like art, it's like if somebody sees an art piece with like a burn up, I don't know, $100 bill with some sort of Bitcoin logo on it, they're like, oh, it might, at least it might sort of like spark a little bit of interest because it speaks their language type of thing. So yeah, I agree with that. But on the philosophical side as well, is that I was thinking about, yeah, there are things in the Bitcoin space that I don't like, and then I think, oh, they're all almost like a narrative that I don't really subscribe to. Yeah, and I've got to a point where I'm like, you know what, we're always going to have these sort of people that are socialist, communist, or whatever sort of camp you might want to place them, right? Because that whole adjective in it, Bitcoin, is for everyone. And I suppose everyone aligns with something in their head, right? And then they find the people they gravitate and agree with, and that just sort of like reinforces the inevitability of Bitcoin? Or have I just gone too philosophical for you, Janis, right now?
I'm not gonna answer that.
But yeah, man, I think art's important, basically, is what I'm trying to say.
Yep.
Joel?
I was just thinking, you said you interviewed 21 people. And as someone who also used to do this, you know, sort of, you have to, it's not only the interviews you do, it's like you said, you prepare the questions, you then have to actually approach these people. Now that you've done it once, do you see it doing it at other conferences as well? Maybe not like 21 interviews, but maybe just a few interviews of people you haven't had in front of the camera yet.
Oh, that's a good question. Actually, if I'm up to it and if I have time, I would probably do it again, but I would do it differently. I wouldn't immediately after I had this person go to the next person, because I was sprinting at the conference and I had no time at all for actually watching talks or going to that booth, and I had no time at all. So I would do it differently. Maybe I would take my time with some people also, not do like 5 minutes, like do like 15 minutes for this time. And yeah, I would definitely do it again, but differently. So yeah.
So what about your peers in Bitcoin? Have you met them in real life? And what sort of stuff do you talk about, you kids? Are you sitting on a park bench smoking a doobie,
No.
drinking white lightning out of a brown paper bag, talking about Bitcoin?
Oh mate,
Like
I sound like a worst drug dealer right now. But no, I first of all, I don't drink. I drink alcohol, but I stopped drinking a little bit. So because I got too much sometimes, especially at halving parties or generally Bitcoin parties. But how should I answer this? My generation, we don't talk about Bitcoin as much as probably you guys do. So we talk more about politics, and especially currently, I mean, the world is on fire. I mean, there's in the east there's war, in the north there's war, in the south there's war, everywhere is war right now. And we more talk about stuff like that. But then on the other hand, whenever we talk about that, we always find connections to Bitcoin, how it could help people, especially people who are at war or in a war zone, right? I mean, Palestine and Israel, for example, how we then also talk about how we can get people out of Palestine and showing them Bitcoin, for example, orange pilling them and showing them around, a way around communism or socialism or just generally a dictatorship, basically. And that stuff we talk about, so political stuff, right? But we never really talk about Bitcoin, really straight Bitcoin. So that's it's interesting because if you think of it, it's like, yeah, actually we do talk about. No, we don't talk enough about Bitcoin, especially my generation, because I want to live in a world where in 20 years time I see my children growing up and we basically live in a social credit system like I mean, Australia just implemented a digital IT, aka CBDC. So I don't want my children, and especially my generation, to see that coming and to grow up in a system like that. So but it's a when you think of it, it's actually really interesting. So yeah.
Do you think we then need, because you often now see specific panels popping up. There was also, I think, a ladies' brunch in Prague. There are more and more mining conferences who focus on something, lightning events, and you sort of have the more broader conferences. Do you also think we need a conference where you exclusively invite teenagers to talk to, where you, if you invite the big names, you invite someone like Jack Mullers, maybe from the younger generation who has more connections to this? Or do you even think we need to approach this differently? Because if you say you guys don't really talk as much about Bitcoin, and honestly, probably not as much shit as we do if we talk about Bitcoin, especially after a few beers, is that more beneficial, do you think? Or do you think this is not needed? It should be more of like a diverse group where everyone can meet and sort of the camps that usually form.
I'm talking my I'm touching my mustache here. Although there's nothing actually. I would say we should keep it diverse. We should have young and old. I mean, I think it would make sense if we would just have a conference for just teenagers. That wouldn't, especially teenagers who are full of hormones and, how
Okay,
they
got it,
sometimes Yeah. So I would say no. We should keep it diverse. We should have young and old. We should have. I mean, the best thing that can happen is that a, let's say, 40-year-old man talks to a 17-year-old girl. Okay, although that sounds weird now, but actually, we Ian's laughing. Don't laugh, mate. But we should actually have that, right? We should have this generation thing where the older generation talks to the younger generation at eye level. So that I would say keep it diverse, keep it simple, keep it old fashioned. You could argue, but
yeah, sort of the older ones talk to the younger ones, and once they get old, they do the same thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Was there anything you took away from the interviews, if you, especially to like the older interviewer you had, where like Sailor, or you also had Adam Beck, where you said, okay, I did not actually know this, or you took something beneficial away from the whole conference as a general?
I would say I took one thing away, that people like Sailor and Adam Beck and all those people, they think differently. Because, Sailor, for example, he can't say, I'm going to take this loan to buy more Bitcoin. Because for him, it's easy. He's a billionaire, basically. Right? So I took that away, that people adore him, but don't actually realize that, yeah, for him, it's easy to say Bitcoin is for everyone, right? Because he has his billions. So I would say I took that away, that people just overlook some things and think, well, I can do that as well. No, you actually can't. So I would say I took that with me. So because it was interesting. So,
mate, before we round up the show, is there anything you wanted to quickly discuss or mention that we haven't yet so far spoke about?
Yeah, I would say, as an end statement, if you want to orange pill people or generally show people about Bitcoin, the number one sentence I have heard, I'm not sure if you guys heard that as well, I don't want to lose money, or I'm afraid I could lose money. I'm like, what the fuck you're talking about? I mean, look at the euro, look at the Swiss franc, look at the US dollar, how they look at them every day. Some day they're like really good, or some day they're like really shit and somewhere in the basement where you can't find it, right? So I would say people who say I'm afraid of losing money, show them Bitcoin and show them what fiat means and what our financial world basically means. And don't be like, Bitcoin fixes this and that. Bitcoin can't fix everything. But if they say I'm afraid of losing money, show them Bitcoin. That's my end statement. So
yeah, it's the one thing that whenever I hear that, it just reveals people's ignorance about what money is, right? Fiat money particularly, because just by them leaving it in that account, it's technically losing value over time, right? Well, it is losing value over time. So they're already losing money. So they might as well give Bitcoin a chance, right?
yeah, and also maybe be critical, because being critical or being, or maybe saying, is it really for me? That's fine. But as long as you tried it, as long as you tried it or try to understand it, that's the best thing. Because I assume not everyone got Bitcoin the first time. It took
Definitely not.
It took steps, right? So yeah, that's it's sometimes hard to orange pill people, but you try your best in doing it. So yeah.
Would you also say there are moments where you're trying to orange pill, it doesn't work, and then you just say, you know what, I'll just leave it? Maybe you gave the first impulse to, I don't know, check out a book or read an article, but if they don't want to grasp it, they don't want to grasp it. Because a lot of what a lot of the Bitcoin maxis do, and I'm talking about like the toxic ones who are very active on social media, they really try to shove Bitcoin down people's throats.
That's what she said.
And of course, there had to be a joke like this. But with that, you sort of end up in the same sphere as with fiat, because you say, use this or nothing else. If you think about it, to be a bit philosophical here, we should go about the way that people should be able to find Bitcoin whenever they need it. Do you think we need to be so hardcore in pushing people down the Bitcoin way? Or is it okay if they maybe even get it in a few years' time?
It's okay if they get it in a few years' time, because and I think also currently, because all these crazy politicians are talking about CBDCs and all that crap. I mean, if they don't get it now, it's fine, because they don't have to get it now. Even if people say we have to act now, we have to understand Bitcoin now, because CBDCs are horrible. I'm like, yeah, but if people don't get it, then it's fine. And I think if we rub a dildo up their arse saying Bitcoin fixes this, it doesn't work. So it doesn't work orange pilling people in a extreme way, because they even get more disgusted by the Bitcoin space as they already are, right? So that's why
it's always best to ease it in gently rather than
go in slowly. Don't.
yeah.
That's what she said, by the way. But
yeah, okay. From now on, that's your that line is forbidden on this show, officially.
But yeah, take your time. So.
Yeah, and I think we got enough time, especially also for the younger people listening. Yes, we do need to wait a bit until, we'll see if the CBDCs even play out. I mean, they all work great in theory, but so far there never has been a real implementation to test what it can and what it can't do. There's always rumors. And even if they're implemented, we've seen it with Bitcoin in the early days. It really used to be the internet money where you would buy weird stuff online with it. And it somehow grasped its way even now into Wall Street. Although the ETFs are not proper Bitcoin, it still has a connection to Bitcoin because they need to back it. And I think the same can be applied with the whole CBDC race, because if people realize, oh, I don't have access to my money, they will need to look for an alternative. And guess what? Bitcoin is probably going to be the alternative at the top of that list.
Can I maybe also add something from before?
Yeah, sure.
What also annoys me in the space is that everyone is so dramatic. They always make huge dramas about certain topics. I'm like, well, you want to cry about it or you want to take it as a champ, right? So it doesn't help if you cry and say, oh, it's unfair. Well, world is not fair, right? I mean, if it would be fair, we wouldn't pay taxes, which is then used for financing wars, right? So, I mean, that annoys me as well, and especially the double standards, because I had it at the G Code event in Bedford in the UK, which it was really cool. It was amazing. But the one talk which Alex Gladstein did, and I'm not going to go really, deep into that subject of human rights, and because it's a huge spectrum, but he talks about how Putin and China are dictators. I'm like, well, what has the US done, for example, in the past? What has the UK done in the past? What did the French do with Napoleon Bonaparte in the past? Like people don't realize that, and that's also a thing that really is annoying, the double standards. Because if you point fingers at them, they always 3 fingers are pointing back at you, right? So that's a thing I think we need to get rid of, and once we do, there's nothing that can stop us, especially in orange pilling people or showing people what Bitcoin is. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you get the what was it? The actually, one thing that annoys me, right, while we're on the topic of what's annoying, is the clickbaity thumbnails you see on, particularly now at the moment, you get these wild fucking speculations on the Bitcoin price, right? And there's one particular podcast at the moment that every day I'm seeing like a different number on it in fiat terms, right? This outrageous number, and I'm like, I know we kind of have to try and incentivize people to like look at the content, but at the same time, it's like it kind of leads to that double standard thing, right? Why, like, are we pricing Bitcoin in fiat now? Is one Bitcoin no longer one Bitcoin? They're saying in the same podcast, like, hyper Bitcoinization, but yet they're sort of talking about profit and gain or how much money you could earn. And I'm like, why is that's one of the things that annoys me in this space, I think, at the moment.
And all of them say, I'm gonna hodl my Bitcoin for my future self or for my future family. I'm like, well, but then what's your family gonna do with those Bitcoins, right? Are they gonna sell them for fiat, or are they gonna keep them and continue hodling? I mean, you don't know that, right? Or I had friends telling me, I hodl my Bitcoin, and if I die, I take them with me in the grave. I'm like, well, good job. No one's gonna get them, right? So that's the thing. Saying I'm gonna keep my Bitcoin, but then eventually everyone's gonna sell them if they have a certain value. Because if you don't sell them, in my opinion, you're stupid. But that's a different topic because I don't want to discourage people or say people who hodl the Bitcoin are stupid. But I just think that the Wall Street and people who trade with Bitcoin or who sell and buy Bitcoin, they're actually the ones who, push the value of Bitcoin, not the hodlers or the people saying, I'm gonna keep my Bitcoin for eternity. But yeah.
Yeah, I think that's safe to say because you see the benefits of the price actions after major company announcements. We saw it with Tesla. You usually see it with the MicroStrategy announcements. There's always a little bit of a pump. And especially since the ETFs launched, even though it's paper Bitcoin, it does help the underlying asset, which you've also seen in other asset classes. So we'll see how long people hodl. I also think there's a selling price for most people. Or there's a conversion price. I know a lot of people who have loads of Bitcoin, and because it makes more sense to them to actually pay people in Bitcoin, they get rid of portions of their stack, but you still incentivize the whole ecosystem. Janis, before we head off into the closing segment, we want to prove with every guest that all roads lead back to Bitcoin, the old saying as it goes. Therefore, I'm going to give you a word or a sentence now, and you have to relate that back to Bitcoin. And because you mentioned before that you like history and these kind of things, we thought the word history books or a history book, if that's easier, how does that relate back to Bitcoin?
I would say look at how it all started, because Satoshi had the idea of Bitcoin. He didn't invent Bitcoin. He had the idea of Bitcoin. And when you look at back who invented hash rate, for example, Mr. Adam Back. And I would say history.
You mean not hash rate. Now I even forgot what he called it.
Did he call it hash? He did.
No, he did. No, hash rate is something different. But let me Google it.
Yeah.
Other search providers are available.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Google anyway listens, so it's easier. Hashcash. There you go.
Hashcash. Sorry, hashcash, not hash rate. When you look at those things that, especially with history of Bitcoin, I would say Satoshi actually had or chose the idea of Bitcoin through stuff that was already there, because corruption was already there, right? What was it again? Hashcash? Hashcash was already there. And I would just say that we can always learn new things. And when you also look at the fact that Bitcoin came from a crisis, which is scary because maybe we will have a next crisis, which will, I wouldn't say reveal a new Bitcoin, but reveal something new, especially a new monetary system. But just that simply, that after every crisis, after everything that happened, there will be always something new, especially something like Bitcoin. Or, I mean, there's no second best, but you know what I'm trying to say, right? So
So whatever it is, we learn from the books that are given to us and the history that happened in the past.
Yeah, especially, and look at what Satoshi did. He chose to write Bitcoin because he saw what happened in the past, especially with dictators like Fidel Castro, for example.
That sounds very philosophical of you.
Yeah, I was about to say that sounds very philosophical.
Fuck. No, you got me. But yeah.
Mate, I love it. That's wicked. Mate, it's been brilliant having you on the show.
Thank you.
You're welcome back anytime. And for those of you that got through to the end of this episode, thank you for your finite time. And as always, you know what's coming up. Stay curious.